Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Hello Fort Wayne. I am your host, Will Aung. Today, I have a very special guest with me, Joshua Gale, of the Executive Director of Hello Neighbors here in Fort Wayne. So, how are you doing today, Josh?
I'm doing very good. Very good. Thanks for having me on.
So, just could you tell us a little bit more about just Neighbors and about yourself as well and what you guys do here in Fort Wayne?
Sure. For our organization, we work largely in homelessness, but particularly homeless prevention. Our goal is that justice applies equally to all people, particularly for the poor. What a lot of people that are facing here in our community are unjust systems, and that's where we work. And it's in our name too. I mean, that's the point for which we exist. We do that by working in an eviction court. We have a homeless shelter for homeless families. We do a great deal of outreach into the community that's all street level. We think it's incredibly important to build social services around person-to-person human interaction. And so that's essentially what we do. And we see phenomenal results with it.
Oh, that's really great to hear. So I've heard about Just Neighbors. You guys have grown a lot since a few decades ago. You guys started around 1999.
Correct.
Right. So you guys grown a lot. Started off in churches. Using that as shelter for the homeless families. Now you guys have helped over 1,000, 2,000 homeless families. So how is it like seeing that growth?
It's been beautiful. I've been here about 4.5 years, replaced a phenomenal executive director in Terry Anderson. So my task was kind of grow into new programs, new areas of relevancy for our organization, and to attach to the different capacity that allows us to do that. It's a beautiful thing to see. Because really, I mean, it's nice to see an organization grow and your work flourish, but when my work flourishes, these families flourish. And so to watch what happens when justice is done and love is equally applied to all people, it's a phenomenal thing to see. So I feel I'm pretty lucky to be able to do this as a career.
So it's really great that these families are being helped. Where are you guys right now, just in terms of you've been working here for about 4 years now. Where are you guys at in terms of numbers of how many families you guys helped and supported throughout the years you've been here?
This year we'll serve about 3,700 families. When I started about 4.5 years ago, we served probably around 300 individuals or so. Phenomenal program, but it was largely our homeless shelter, and that was the number of people that we can house each year. When I started, we started our outreach program, eviction intervention, but also our food truck too. So between all of those programs, we're looking at about 4,000 people without significant increases in budget. We look at a lot of options for doing social work. Many of the answers are larger budgets, more people, pay more and pay more. I don't think that that's the case. I think that we can show our growth by adequately leveraging resources in our community that currently exist. And so that's the area in which we try to work, and that's where we grow. When our organization is growing, we have more partnerships. When our organization keeps moving forward, it's only because the people that are along with us. So to me, all of that together is what makes it a beautiful thing.
That's really great to hear. So you guys are the only organization that houses homeless families here in Fort Wayne. So how is that like, knowing that you guys are helping thousands of families in the past, and just how is that impacting Fort Wayne as a whole?
For our organization, we do emergency shelter. Everything that we do is crisis management. There's other organizations that can house families for longer periods of time. We're the only ones that do those very short crisis resolution type of work. And so that's kind of our niche. And I pray that more people start things exactly like our shelter. I mean, those are more of the things that we need here in this community. So what we see as a result from that, in our shelter, about 92% over the last 4 years have gone on to stable housing within 30 days. We're able to resolve those issues very quickly by making connections for people that they might not otherwise have. A lot of people think that homelessness comes from poor personal choices, mental health issues, substance abuse. It's really not the case. Mental health is exacerbated by homelessness. Drug abuse comes out of poverty and the stress all related to it. So what we can do is actually have a safe place for people to be. And we don't even have to teach them to budget. We don't have to really teach a lot of parenting classes. When people know that they're not alone, they can get some really important things done. And so that's all that we really do. That's the reason why so many people can go on to stable housing with our program, or go to one of our other partners where they can live in a shelter for a much longer time with a specific program for them to do. So the results have been increased housing stability, which decreases childhood abuse and neglect. The trauma that comes from poverty and bouncing from one house to the other. Test scores for children in school go up. I think those are the important things to measure, particularly with our work in the courts. With how many cases are dismissed now at this point, to be able to find reconciliation between tenants and landlords to keep people in their homes instead of waiting for them to come to a shelter, instead of waiting for something else to happen. If we can keep people there, and our partnerships with that have been incredibly successful in it, between Fort Wayne City Government, United Way, Catholic Charities, Lutheran Social Services, there's a lot more to thank in that. But if we can bring all those resources around one person without them feeling like they've got to do it, or there's a number to call, or they got to tell their story for the 10th time, in asking what the results for the community are, I think is a more compassionate city. I think it makes a city that understands where people are coming from and can tell their story, because they have a voice. And what they're telling us is not simply more resources. They want us. They want our connections and ability to make those.
With that being said, could you tell us a little bit more about the eviction side of your organization, the team that helps with eviction in courts?
Yeah, of my 15 years doing this, I think this program is probably one of the more beautiful things I've seen in my time. We started in November with the partnership between United Way and the city. Before that, we did a few things, much smaller scale. With some of the CARES Act funding provided in rental assistance, we could be far more targeting to some of these issues that are in the courts. So made a great partnership with them in that. We've effectively cut the eviction rate in half with that partnership. And it's important to recognize, too, the very high eviction rate that Fort Wayne has. We are 13th in the nation for evicting people from their homes. About 8.7% of all Fort Wayne renters will be in eviction court. I think that's an issue of justice, and our courts definitely felt the same. And in working this project together, they've brought more staff to support the different organizations that are there, and it's a truly collaborative program. The judges, the courts, even the lawyers and the landlords, if we were able to bring all those people together, we can make real resolutions instead of writing checks for somebody to stay somewhere. As human beings, there's simply more that we can do. Through that, I think we're at about 2,300 households that we've worked with in eviction intervention. And for rental assistance, I think we've done about 1,000 of those and able to keep them in their homes through that. It also can shed a light on injustices. Most of our landlords are running a business, and we can work with that. There's a number that simply want to be punitive, don't want to follow the law, or don't want to follow procedure, or see people around them as something to take advantage of. And that can happen when people aren't watching. But we're there. We are physically in the courthouse. We are in your hearing. Indiana Legal Services can provide legal representation too, which is also huge. We just want to be there so the law applies equally, because we believe, and it is the right of these people. So that's kind of really where we start. And going forward, I think we have beautiful things coming from that too. More partnerships related to it, better use of resources, and to keep some of this going.
Could you a little bit more about the services you guys provide? I know you mentioned food trucks before. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, our food truck's wild. So we started that we really launched last summer, I would say, so a year and a quarter or so. The point of it wasn't so much to provide food. Particularly for street homelessness, there's a lot of places providing food. Like on Tuesday nights when we're out, you can get 3 dinners in a row. It's not so much that people need more and more food, they need more and more personal connections and community built around that. So we have Same City Food Truck. The name is because the homeless don't live in tent cities, they live in your city, and they share a common humanity. So let's talk about that. We're able to pull up into a park and create community around that truck, to have restaurant quality food. In a lot of cases, these are coming from restaurants locally. Club Soda, Umi, several others provide wonderful, wonderful meals, and you can choose. Because our people, a lot of times, why are you wearing this? This is what they gave me. Why do you live here? This is where they put me. Why are you eating this? This is what they gave me. But if they can come up to the truck and choose what they eat between several different things, it's empowering. And we see empowerment in that choice. A number who have gone on to stable housing volunteer with the truck too. And so whenever the truck pulls up, people know that that's a place where they can be safe and comfortable and not judged. So while we serve food, I think that while we sit and have dinner together, so much more can be shared. So much more than if they were on the phone talking to me about a housing issue. I just wanted to learn where you're from, some of your story. And so that's really what the food truck really is built around. And so watching that has been pretty amazing.
Yeah, that sounds pretty nice. Just to have bond over a food truck. Having a good time, having a great time. Seems like lots of fun too.
Yeah, it's really enjoyable.
So you've worked in a lot of charities in a lot of different cities. Like I heard you worked in Chicago, in Philly, but right now here you're in Fort Wayne. Can you talk about like your work experience, just your personal experience you've had working with these charities, helping the community, just bringing them together? Talk a little bit more about your experience just with that in general.
Sure. In between Philadelphia, I was in here, I was in Latin America. So I spent a big chunk of my career overseas, Guatemala and Peru, but also being in the different cities, just kind of seeing different cultures and how things function. In a lot of places, really, where I started, it was just the city would tell us what we need to do. When I got to Philly, I just would walk around Philly until we knew what we were supposed to be doing. And there it was primarily working with the homeless. That was about 12 years ago, and I've continued in that work since then. Before that, I had my internship in Gary, Indiana. After undergrad, I went to seminary actually here in Fort Wayne at Concordia Theological Seminary. And then as a pastor, went out and did that work. And I'm not so much in that church orbit anymore, but a lot of my work was taking nonprofits, turning some of these around, increasing revenue, increasing relevancy in programs and things that they're doing. You kind of learn over time what things work and what things don't, what things will connect with people and what things won't. When I was in Peru, we would watch other groups pull up with 2,000 kilos of rice and drop it off, not knowing the language, not knowing the people, and not knowing the neighborhood. It just happened to have a lot of shacks around, and so people would just drop stuff off. Shoes and eyeglasses, while we have a guy who does eyeglasses in that neighborhood. Watching what people really need is not so much just dropping off truckloads of stuff. They wanted me to have lunch with them. And that's really what most of that came down to. And I built my whole understanding of social services around that. Whether it was in Philly, sitting in parks, even in homeless camps, and got arrested for it, interestingly enough. So through those experiences, you see how much communities and people and ourselves can be transformed by love. You don't need a lot of money to do it. You don't need big teams to do it. But if you're organized around loving others, things can really change. And so in my career, that's mostly what that's taught me.
Right. I really love to hear that because here in Fort Wayne, it's not a big city, it's not a small city, it's just an average sized city. And I've grew up here. I've always felt a sense of community and love by this city, which is why just my next question to you is how can we here in Fort Wayne help Just Neighbors? How can I help with Just Neighbors? Because it's something, just by you're hearing about it, it's just something I would love to contribute to and help with. Yeah.
The number one thing that anybody can do is learn. The average age of a homeless person in America is 9 years old. Overwhelming amount of the homeless population are children, going through school, trying to make friends, trying to make sense of the world around them. Even when homelessness can appear like the stereotype that we have. That might be somebody panhandling, or somebody older, or a war veteran, or somebody with tattered clothes. It's really not what homelessness looks like in America. Learning that, people can learn empathy and how close all of us actually are to homelessness. And for those of us that simply can't be, like myself, if I lost my house, we've got places to move to, and we've got friends, we have family that can take people in. Not everybody has that. Those connections disappear in a lot of impoverished situations. It's so important to learn what homelessness even is. When I was having lunch today, the table next to me was talking about homelessness as if it's panhandling. It's not. It's just not. It's children, particularly single mothers, and particularly black single mothers, are overwhelmingly affected by this. In Fort Wayne, if you're black, you're 5 times more likely to be homeless. Here in this city alone, we have a fantastic strategic plan for the city coming up here in the next month or so, for more of the community to learn about what homelessness looks like here. You have people fleeing domestic violence. You have people fleeing various different abuse situations. The stories are complicated. It's not a matter of somebody just wanting to sit around and do nothing for the rest of their life. They're not lazy, they're traumatized. A lot of the things that we see are trauma responses to PTSD. Most of the people that we meet with have been seriously sexually abused, physically abused, particularly from childhood. That is not really setting people up for success. But the main thing that the city can do is learn that. Afterwards, we love volunteers, come out and serve food. It's one of the best ways to learn. You got to eat dinner, come out and eat dinner with us. Hang out with somebody, maybe they'll talk to you, maybe they won't. But that's a crucial part of learning. And then we can see it all around us. If justice isn't equally applied, if people are ignored because of either the color of their skin or the amount of money that's in their wallet, that's a problem for all of us, whatever the context is. So all of that education can be formed together to make a more compassionate community. Volunteering in person can be incredibly important. It's not for everybody. There's a lot of people who can be intimidated by, say, folks around if they haven't experienced some of these stories, and they might not know that they're just regular people like you and I. But there's a lot who want to actually physically be there to volunteer. A great person to get a hold of is Holly at our organization. You just call our main line, ask for Holly, or you can leave a voicemail to get you plugged in. Every other Tuesday, we're in Fryman Square. We always need lots of volunteers for that. Just got a great donation from Byrne for some articles of clothing for the winter. Always need more hands for that kind of thing. Holly is a great person to connect to that. For the food truck too, we have various things that we need for prep work. We'd love to see more culinary arts students around us who's able to do some of that. And also too, with our eviction work, there's several things that we can do. Anytime someone has an eviction filed against them in Allen County, we send a postcard with some information and resources. We need those filled out with names and addresses and stamps put on them. So there's a number of things that people can do to volunteer personally, and Holly's the connection for that.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the food trucks?
Yeah, so the food truck actually I originally had this idea when I was in Philadelphia. I worked with some of the organizers for Occupy, if you remember Occupy Wall Street in about 2011. We had a substantial camp right at City Hall in Philadelphia, and it was an incredibly interesting time. We were serving quite a few people who were unsheltered and experiencing homelessness right from there. People would come together and just cook food, and everybody would just be around in one place, hundreds of people. One of the city's responses was to make it illegal to distribute food to people that were on the street, unless they were picnicking, right? Unless they were families. So we just bought a bunch of blankets for people to sit on the, in the grass. It's like, well, here's families just taking a picnic. We needed longer-term solutions, something that was licensed by the county, something that we were allowed to serve from without some of these other issues to work around it. We ended up with a great partnership with an organization called Broad Street Ministry, and we're able to move a lot of that inside without the truck. Weren't able to get the food truck off and going when I was in Philadelphia. Um, the COVID pandemic brought some more resources to some nonprofits, either through the CARES Act or ARPA funding. So that's how we were able to acquire a food truck here. Bird and Cleaver was a restaurant here that had closed right at the start of the pandemic. So we were able to purchase that food truck from them. And I don't even think they had it even a year. The pandemic hit and just really had serious impacts on their business. So we were able to acquire the food truck then, hire some chefs, and start building the program around that. But the thing that was most important to me was just don't serve them what they're normally getting. No tuna casserole, no more spaghetti, no more lasagna, none of those things. We want stuff that has actual names on menus, things that we go to food trucks to purchase. If you're going to make a chicken sandwich, it better be one of the most unique and best tasting chicken sandwiches you are going to have. So that was really where the food truck started with. Have multiple of those options. We've got a sous vide machine, we got little smokers, we have different things from microgreens and all kinds of cool stuff. So the model of the food truck was, what if we just make our work extravagant? What if charity isn't so much something that we spend so much time thinking through, and just pick the best of everything that we have and give it to anybody around us who asks for it. So that food truck is kind of part of that model. And even in the name, Same City Food Truck, whether somebody is experiencing homelessness or not, or close to it, or far away, or wealthy or not, we all have a connection one to another here in this community. One of the best ways to highlight that is food.
My next question to you is, for Just Neighbors, what are some of your goals and next steps you have with Just Neighbors? Any future projects you guys are working on?
I think we're going to stick with those 4 projects for here a little bit, because I think a lot of our expansion can be specifically in those. Our eviction work currently is in Allen County, and we have a couple other county court systems that are interested in this kind of model. So we're looking to expand into more of that. I want to do more outreach. I've hired very few people who have offices in our building. I want more people who are actually out there, people who have the personality and ability and lived experience to understand these things, just to make those personal connections. Because there's all kinds of resources here. It's just very difficult for somebody in a traumatic situation who's surviving from minute to minute to pick up the phone and do all the stuff that's needed for these things. If they know that they're together with somebody else that is knowledgeable in the system that can do that, that's incredibly important where we want to grow. So we need more of those people, we need more of those workers, and I think that's really a future for a lot of social services, not in the city, not just simply in the state, but in this country and this planet, to learn from what really helps people resolve some of these issues. And very rarely is it money. We will have economic issues in perpetuity, but they don't have to lead to childhood abuse. They don't have to lead to neglect. They don't have to lead to all the other things that we see. So the more that we can expand into those things is where we'll be working.
Very good to hear. So before we wrap it up, is there anything else you would like to talk about Just Neighbors, or just anything else in general that I may have not asked you yet?
Yeah, I just think building on the education point, I think it's important for people, even if they don't support our organization in any way whatsoever, to just look at what those opportunities are around you. Preventing homelessness starts with our family, and it starts with our friends. One of the largest segments of growing homelessness in America is college students. What are people going through who are around you? How about the people that are in class with you? Those who are in Fort Wayne Community Schools. There's about 1,000 homeless children registered in Fort Wayne Community Schools as homeless each year, every single year. Last few years, we're approaching more 1,500. In Northeast Indiana, it's even more. So if we can do anything, it's not so much how people can support Just Neighbors, but I want to tune people to what's happening then around them. If I say one more thing, it's just check in with your people. Get to know them, hear their stories, and make sure that everybody's okay. Because that can stop homelessness, and if we can stop homelessness, we can prevent major issues of mental illness and substance abuse. All of those things come before. We tend to think of solving homelessness as addressing mental illness and substance abuse, which needs to be done, and we need more resources there. But we can stop it before it happens, and the way to do that is by knowing each other.
All right, and that'll be all for this edition of Hello Fort Wayne. I'd like to thank another thanks, a very special guest here, Josh Gale. Thank you for joining us here at Hello Fort Wayne. Really appreciate you having me here. And that will be all for this episode. Tune in next time, and please check out College TV on our YouTube channels and our Instagram channels. And please just give another thanks to Josh for being here with us today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.